Open your mind's door to J-Snip 4. Open your mind's door to J-Snip 4. American dream, relocated to Tennessee. Now he's on 10 acres, GMO free. Planting info seeds in the minds of the sheep.
Well, as long as I've been alive, almost 35 years now in a few days, and at the same time, I haven't been paying attention my whole life to things, but I don't think there's ever been a bigger push for gun control, major gun control, than what we've seen over the last few days regarding this Connecticut shooting. And I see something very interesting here. And the name George Soros is tied to it, if that means anything to you. World's largest producers of guns and ammunition to be sold off. What? With political pressure increasing, the U.S. private equity firm Cerberus Capital Management is selling gun maker Freedom Group, one of the world's largest producers of guns and ammo. Freedom Group, who has been mired in controversy after internet rumors tied them to George Soros, owns some of the world's most popular gun brands, including Remington, Bushmaster, DPMS/Panther Arms, Marlin, H&R, NEF, LC Smith, Parker, EOTAC, AAC, Dakota, and INTC, to name a few. Also, TAPCO, Advanced Armament, etc. Over the last couple of years, Cerberus Capital Management began to quietly buy up a majority of the major gun manufacturers. The private equity firm then started to consolidate them into a holding company called the Freedom Group. Rumors swirled around the internet that the company was actually trying to take down the gun manufacturing industry by buying up most of the firearms companies in the U.S. What will happen now is anyone's guess. And their Cerberus Capital Management said in a statement, It is apparent that the Sandy Hook tragedy was a watershed event that has raised the national debate on gun control to an unprecedented level. Exactly like I said, I don't think I've ever seen a level of such push for gun control like we are right now. We believe that this decision allows us to meet our obligations to the investors whose interests we are entrusted to protect without being drawn into the national debate that is more properly pursued by those with the former charter and public responsibility to do so. So again, you can kind of take that statement with a grain of salt kind of thing. Or is he talking about, in regards to investors, he's basically making a statement that probably any company would say, in other words, our first obligations to our investors, naturally, of course. And is he trying to say we're fixing to sell off because it's in the best interest of our investors? Or is he trying to say, we know there was bloodshed, but we still got to sell guns and ammo, we don't care? And considering George Soros is tied to it, I don't think it's because they want to go and sell more guns and ammo. I think it's because they're fixing to sell off and they're having a little investor meeting to say, what do you guys think? Should we do this? And naturally, seeing the way things are going lately, they may go ahead and sell off and break apart or whatever. Who knows what the fate will be. But it is good to know, honestly, that the amount of guns that are already out there, again, assault rifles, shotguns, even handguns, all of them, the amount that are out there in the American people's hands right now, that's good to know. What's not good to know is that when I read what Dianne Feinstein, Congresswoman, piece of garbage, said it's not just going to be like an assault rifles ban to where, you can't import them anymore, you can't trade them or, you know, get rid of them. If you got one, you can keep it. No, she wanted to go a step further. And her step further was basically getting rid of them completely. So, again, all I can see with this damn map, this Batman map, this crap, there was like 4 or 5 different strike zones. And strike zone 1 was one called Sandy Hook, with a road and pattern similar, extremely similar to what the real map looks like today over at Sandy Hook. And this was supposed to be in a movie that came out a while ago in Batman. And again, the original one, when that came out, there was another shooting in the theater while that was debuting in the theaters. So now we have that same map from the same movie where the other shooting took place, and another shooting happens at a location basically on the Batman map. Are you freaking kidding me? Again, coincidence after coincidence. It's just a string of coincidences. Nothing to see here. So all I could say is, what is the next thing going to be? Is it going to be number 2? You know, strike zone number 2, strike zone number 3? In other words, are we going to see, okay, assault rifle ban, and it'll be like the one Clinton had, where you can't buy them and sell them and trade them anymore, but if you got one, you can keep them. Something like that. The other one, or then let's say another school shooting happens. Oh my God, another one, and it happens to be in strike zone number 2. Which of course doesn't have to be in strike zone number 2. It could just be another shooting, period. And then, oh my God, you see, we put some stricter gun controls, but that wasn't enough. There's more killings in the schools, and they'll take it a step further. And if they have another killing after that one, you can kiss all of your weapons goodbye. Because it may start out with assault rifles, and then they'll ban them, and then they'll get rid of them completely, and you gotta turn them in. We're gonna pay you for them, but you gotta turn them in, that kind of thing. And then you'll have that turn into, okay, now we think shotguns and rifles and that kind of thing, that needs to be taken off the shelf. And next thing you know, handguns. And next thing you know, we're going to end up like the UK and Greece and all that whole place, where nobody's got guns, nobody can do anything, their government runs amok, and there's nothing they can do about it. Not to say that you got to have a gun to do something about it, like, you know, like that's how you're supposed to solve your problems in your country, by having a gun. No. A gun is simply to protect yourself against that tyrannical government when it turns into the tyrannical government that most people just can't seem to see right now, at least in our country. But it will get to a level where everyone says, oh crap, oh my God, this is what those gun holders were talking about, the ones who were pro-gun. Oh, that's what they were talking about. I had no idea. Well, it's a little too late now. Kind of like in Germany, it was a little too late. Like I said, I'm going out into the country. All the crap that most people would have to deal with is going to take place within the city limits. When you look at crime maps and that kind of thing, do you realize where I live, there is like, seriously, I swear to you, I looked up the crime rate and there's none. There's like, I mean, none. As if it doesn't even exist. Now you go up and pull up Tampa, Florida, or Brandon, Florida. Oh my God. Listen, when I'm out patrolling with the sheriff's office, again, I do the citizen patrol program, volunteer. We do low-end bozo work, if you will, you know, dealing with traffic crashes, lights out, railroad crossing messed up, shut a road down for some reason, you know, just stuff like that. But we're on the same radio, the same channels they are, so we're talking to the same dispatchers they're talking to. We see and hear the same calls that they see and hear. And I am hearing armed robberies almost as if it's common. Not every time I go out, obviously. But the fact that I normally go out 2 to 3 times a month on Fridays, I'm not out every single day, and the chances that I do hear those calls coming out when I do go out, and I'm only out for a 6-hour shift, that's what we do, you can probably really imagine how many armed robberies and other things there are out there. And not to mention, I'll be the first one to admit, because I learned this being there, that when you're a sheriff or a police chief or whatever, you obviously want to get reelected. You're gonna have to show that the crime in your town has decreased ever since you took office. And even if the economy sucks and crime is going up and up and up, no fault of your own as being the sheriff or the chief of police, you still want to get reelected, kind of like a politician, right? So I've come to find out that some of the calls that used to get classified under a certain category, they kind of change them to where they don't classify that, or where there was definitely 2 or 3 separate incidents or separate types of crimes, if you will, because it was tied to the same, let's say a house or whatever, or a building. They kind of make it become one. So even though there's definitely 3 clear-cut things that happen, nope, it's 1. We're gonna count that as 1. And where this used to be called like an assault or this or that, we're gonna take that down to just, you know, like a fight. Where, in other words, it's not gonna go into the assault category, like a little, you know, as if kids were fighting or whatever. And again, I don't know all of the ins and outs of the specifics of what got changed and what didn't, but I have heard that in the sheriff's department and listened to some of the roll calls, because we can sit in on the roll calls and listen to them talk about it. And then they stopped doing the roll calls because they determined they would rather have the deputies out on the street, and every, like, once a month instead of every Friday or Saturday, or excuse me, I think it was Wednesday and Friday, they'd have roll call. They now do it like once a month or something like that. But while I was there listening, you would pick up on stuff like that, you know, or I would. So crime is going up. Don't let the numbers fool you. And as sad as it is to say, is whether it's a sheriff or a chief of police in any county, in any city, in the entire United States of America, and most likely every other country, they want to get reelected no matter what. They want to show you that crime's gone down no matter what. So you're going to see those numbers. So when you see numbers that, wow, crime actually got worse, or it was this or that, you're actually seeing, more than likely anyways, you're actually seeing fudge numbers anyways. So the real numbers are probably even much, much worse. And again, city limits or close to city. I looked at where my boss is living out there in Clifton, and then I look where I am at, which is about, I don't know, 30-minute drive to Clifton. And that, in other words, both towns have like no crime. I mean, literally no crime. It's incredible. That's where you want to be in a country that would take your firearms, or make it to where you don't have any firearms at all, etc. Because the chances of any of you listening to this right now, if tonight they came out and Obama said we're either via executive order, or we just had a rush through congressional hearing and we voted and we're just banning firearms. The only thing you can keep is a handgun. I already know human behavior. I already know what history shows me. And history shows me that when I wake up tomorrow morning, if that happened, I wouldn't be hearing any news that a bunch of citizens got together and created a militia and they're gonna overthrow the government because they violated the Constitution, and they're gonna try to do it peacefully, but by God, they're bringing their guns, of course. Because if you ain't got no guns, you ain't overthrowing nothing. The chances of me hearing that in this country full of flipping sheep, you got a better chance. I was about to say you have a better chance of bringing your kid down to the Catholic Church to get molested. But the truth is you probably do. So, let me just scratch that out and just say, there's not a chance in hell you would expect to wake up in this country with these sheep and hear that they're taking their country over. You know, I pray to God that I'm wrong. I pray to God that, holy crap, there's enough people awake who are refusing to comply, and as the police or whoever it is that's dispatched to go take your guns forcefully because you didn't turn them in, that you start to hear people fighting with the police. And that's what would happen. The police would be putting themselves in danger, not to any fault of their own, but because of what the government did. If I was a sheriff or a police chief or whatever, I would make a public statement immediately if I heard those words about a gun ban or assault rifle ban or anything, and I would immediately come out, press release, Tampa, Florida, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, if I was the sheriff. We will not be complying with this unlawful order. It is against the Constitution, and the Congress does not have the right to rewrite the Constitution. It takes a constitutional Congress with all states combined basically agreeing on something. I don't know, there's a certain number, but massive, massive majority in order to change the Constitution. And because that did not happen, I, as the sheriff, will not be complying with that. I would make it public statement immediately. And I would also ask the other sheriffs to do what I'm doing. Because if we don't, we're going down the path of these third world countries in these prior dictatorships, and I would name them all, from Mao to Joseph Stalin to Hitler, to even communist China in the 80s when they did their big push, etc. I'd lay it all out and say, folks, I don't care what the reason is that they want to take your guns away, but once those guns are gone, no matter if these school shootings are happening or not, when they take the population's guns away, shortly thereafter, a dictatorship pops up. There hasn't been a time in the history of mankind, since we've had guns at least, that it didn't go that way. So if you're too naive to think, well, this is America and we don't do those things and we're this and that, you sure as hell aren't paying attention to what's going on. You must not be paying attention to the debt ceiling and what happens to a country's currency and what's going to happen to your country's currency and what's going to happen to all the people around the world, countries, peoples, other banks, whatever, that are holding on to United States debt, treasury notes, as we allow that to massively increase. And we have to default on it one day. And when we default on it, those countries aren't going to want to do business with us. It will be like living in a hellhole in this country if that occurs. And by God, why won't it occur? Because you can look at all these things I've said, look at the deficit, look at what the government's doing, look at what's happening, look at what laws are being passed, look at the executive orders the presidents have been passing over the last 10 years, including our very own current president, and you will see something very startling in those executive orders. That'll make you say, why in the hell are they writing this? What in the world kind of world would we be living in this country to where this executive order would be, taking place? The things mentioned are like taking place now. Oh my gosh. So your little sheeple mind goes back and says, well, that's just a what if scenario. I understand the government has to have these what ifs just in case something bad happens, and that's the only time it would be used. And no, it wouldn't go to that extent. It would be used probably for, something else. Your mind wants to rationalize like the good thing. That's just the way we are as normal humans are anyways. So we've got to rationalize it into the better outcome, right? We want to always hear the better outcome, not the worst. And history always tells us it's the worst. But we still want to rationalize because we have hope and faith that it'll somehow not this time happen. Maybe I prayed more than other people, so it's not going to happen this time. Or maybe, I was a good boy for Christmas and Santa Claus, said I was good, so I'm not going to have to experience my country doing what all these other countries have done during the same circumstances that my country's going through right now. Right? I mean, would you be foolish if you saw a massive tidal wave coming in to say, well, I'm blessed, I'll be fine. Or, I don't like thinking negative. Not gonna hurt me. Everyone else around you might be running, except for some of the sheep saying, oh wow, I've never seen that before, that's pretty cool. And then it slams into them and kills them, along with you. Are we that naive to think there's no way that's where this whole gun control thing's heading? If you're not paying attention to the very important things, which sadly they're not taught in school, use that internet to educate yourself, by the way. If you're not educated in these things, you would say gun control is needed, and we're past that as a society, we need to go to the next level, and oh yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree. But there's a problem. When they take your guns, dictators come out of nowhere. And you may not know this already, but there's already one in office, and you're going to find out before he leaves. Take care.